Did everyone get perfect? We are here. Awesome. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today, the Individual Development Plan Workshop. My name is Valentina Pribble. I am currently the Director of Finance for the ATD Puget Sound chapter, and in my day job, I'm currently in search for my next opportunity as some sort of learning and development professional. My previous role was as a senior learning and development partner. A little bit more about me. I've been in the learning and development field for about 7 years, and it is truly where my passion lies. So much so that even during my kind of in-between period of searching for my next opportunity, I've developed this workshop and have offered it to a few different organizations, and continue to do some kind of contracting work on the side. I'm also a huge lover of travel. And in fact, my little family and I, we hit the road last year in January in a 37-foot trailer, and we traveled from Washington down to California, all the way across to Maine, and then down to Florida. And now we're back home in our home state of Washington. And I'm really glad that we took the opportunity to do that. As I mentioned earlier, joining me is Helen, and I'll give her a moment to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Valentina. I am the producer today, and so I'll be behind the scenes checking on the chat, making sure any questions or comments are addressed. I'll also be moving you into your breakout rooms, which we'll have a few today. My role with ATD is I'm the Director of Professional Development, and I'm very lucky to work with Valentina, not only on the board, but on this program, which she graciously offered in the fall last year, and we're really excited to continue offering it in the future. For the professional development team, I ensure that there's at least one event every quarter and that we're constantly developing new programs that could help our membership take on activities that would help them grow professionally and in their career, and as well in some ways personally, as you'll see today. Um, I am an instructional designer currently at a legal tech management company, and I've spent my first 5 years out of university in human resources, so spent a lot of time in that world, and then I pivoted to L&D and instructional design in the last 5 years. So really cool place to be, and IDP is something very dear to me because that's what I used to promote, and now I get to be someone who gets to really create training on how to get involved in it. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing the conversations today.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. And with that, a little bit about what portion of the ATD capability model this workshop in particular ties back to. And so, as Helen mentioned, today's workshop will focus on two categories, so both personal and professional development as it relates to the ATD capability model. For personal, it ties back to lifelong learning. So having that focus on always developing and learning new things in order to progress in your career and to enhance your skills as a professional. On the professional side, this ties back to career and leadership development. And so as you are kind of developing in your career or considering what the next step might be as far as your skill set goes, this workshop is a great way to kind of begin that work. And some of the things that we'll go over today are the learning objectives of the workshop. We'll also introduce the topic and then spend the bulk of our time in building your IDP with the help of all of you in the room. So this workshop is really intended to be highly interactive, which means that we will do a good amount of breakout rooms. I believe we'll have about 3 throughout our time today. And we'll take a break, about 5 minutes or so, halfway through the workshop, and we'll end our time with a recap and some next steps. So this workshop is really just the beginning in your development journey. And my hope for this time is to make sure that this is a burst of inspiration, and that you'll continue kind of this motivation and inspiration that you've received today beyond this workshop and into your day-to-day, and will provide you with some steps on how you can track your development journey and check in on those milestones. Any questions before we dive in? No? All right. So our goals for today are to identify skills that you'd like to develop and or knowledge that you'd like to gain. We'll also define what an individual development plan is, and then you'll get the opportunity to build and document strategies for achieving the goals that you set in your IDP. The next steps for your IDP will also be determined so that you can carry on the momentum from today into your day-to-day. So before we get started, we'll kick things off with some breakout rooms. So in your breakouts, you'll have the opportunity to get to know the group that you'll be working with throughout the time today. And so really the goal of these breakout rooms is to help one another refine your individual development plan so that it can be implemented and applied so that you are able to successfully track the completion of your goals. And so in your breakout rooms, you'll share a little bit about yourself and then what you're hoping to get out of the IDP workshop today. Once you come back, you'll share what you're hoping to get out of today in chat. And then Helen will help us kind of identify some themes of what you're hoping to get out of the workshop. And then we'll revisit those at the end of the workshop to make sure that we've checked all the boxes in what you were hoping to achieve today. So any questions before we set up the breakout rooms and send you off? Okay, so you'll be in groups of 2 and you'll have about 6 minutes in the breakout room. And then each of you will have about 3 minutes to share. And then once you return, get ready to share what you're hoping to get out of today in chat. Awesome. We'll see you shortly.
Valentina, I was just talking to Randy on Slack, and he's there's
Oh,
Randy.
awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put your resilience. Oh, thank you. You can also build greater resilience by increasing your mental fitness, which in turn means investing in your ability to bounce back after some rough patches. Some examples might be maybe a really tough performance review or some really tough feedback from a peer or a manager. And kind of the most obvious benefit of development is learning new or enhancing current skills. And I want to double down on this one for just a moment. And the reason for that is when you are enhancing your skills, you are essentially making future you really grateful because you're making your future selves work a lot easier, right? You're simplifying the tasks that you need to do, you're enhancing those skills. So when it comes up in your role or in your day-to-day, then you already have the skill set in order to do the things that you need to do. And I'd love to hear from some of you, if you want to come off mute, why is development important to you? If you prefer to share in chat, please feel free to. Why is development important to you?
I could share if you like, Valentina.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Randy.
I think in my role there's always like new, I guess, advancements and things coming out in learning development, and I think like having professional development goals within learning development and kind of keep me focused and enhancing those skills. So kind of staying abreast on what are some of the current trends and in the field, I think is why it's important for me.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Right. Well, as you're thinking about other reasons why development is important to each of you, we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. So, what is professional development? I'm sure many of you, kind of in theory, know what professional development is. And after doing some research, kind of the themes that I found is that professional development is truly the process of improving current skills, learning new skills, or gaining knowledge and preparing for the next step in your career or new role expectations. So, as you're stepping into maybe a new role, a more advanced role, or maybe your role is just changing because we know that the current kind of organizational climate, economic climate, being in a downturn, our roles are constantly changing, right? We're minimizing the number of people within the organization. And so folks have to wear more hats. And so as those things happen, having really strong professional development focus can help you to stay up to date on the skills that you need in order to continue to progress in your career. And typically, professional development interventions might include achieving a certification, completing content in platforms like LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Skillsoft, or maybe in-house made content through an LMS. It could also be a stretch project or assignment. It could be a mentorship program where either you are a mentor or a mentee. And finally, and really the reason why we're here today, you could also develop an individual development plan. And the reason why I'd love to, or I've dedicated a workshop to this IDP is because oftentimes when we're within an organization, we have options like, taking or completing an IDP or completing courses, but oftentimes employees aren't sure what to do with that content after they've completed the IDP or after they've taken the course. And so this workshop really is designed to provide you with the tools on what you can do after you've done the thing, right? After you've completed a certification or taken a course or filled in an IDP. And one other thing to note is that a byproduct of an IDP could be a promotion, but promotion isn't the post-requisite and shouldn't be the focus of an IDP. In fact, the reason why I don't think my very first IDP worked very well was because I was so focused on getting that next job title that I was lost, on that specific job title instead of focusing on the journey and developing the skills that I needed in order to be ready for that next job title. And so I invite all of you to have a really open mind today and enjoy the journey, as cheesy as that sounds. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the IDP. So an IDP is a tool that you can use to support your development conversations with your manager, a mentor, or somebody who is going to help keep you accountable and guide you to reaching your development goals. An IDP is typically owned by the person wanting to develop, and it's best if the person wanting to develop owns it, but then it's supported by a manager or a mentor. An IDP is typically used when developing a skill or gaining knowledge. And there are many IDP templates out there, but most IDPs have some sort of structure where a SMART goal framework is used and the 3E framework is used as well. The 3Es are typically education, exposure, and experience. And I like adding a fourth E of entourage because that really helps kind of keep you accountable and adds that additional accountability partners that can help accelerate your development. Any questions about an IDP before we keep going forward? All right, awesome. So before we dive into building your IDP, I want all of you to take a few minutes to journal and reflect on your IDP goal. So I'll have you take a few minutes and consider the questions on the screen. You'll notice that there's kind of two paths that you can take. And so if you are a talent development professional, whether in learning and development or talent development, I encourage you to really take a look at the second set of questions. However, if you're not in learning and development, the first two questions that you see on the screen would be the ones for you. And so I encourage you to consider what you need to know now in order to be more effective in your role, and then what you might need to refine in the next 1 to 2 years in order to be ready for the next level in your role. And if you need a little bit of inspiration with maybe what skills you'd like to develop, I'm going to share a link in chat that takes you to, I guess, some inspiration of some skills that you can develop in order to be more effective, really, in any role. All right, so for this time, I invite you to turn your camera off as you're reflecting on these questions. And then once you are ready, go ahead and turn your camera back on, and that will be the signal to me that you're ready to keep moving forward. And I will check back in about 5 minutes or so. Welcome, Sarah. So glad you could make it. We are just reflecting on what our skill that might be for our IDP. And so encourage you to take a look at the questions on the screen. And if you are an L&D professional or talent development professional, those two bottom questions would probably be more in your kind of realm of work. However, if you're not, the first two questions would also align. And we are at the 5-minute mark after the reflection. If you need a little bit more time, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and I'll give you a couple more minutes. Okay, Rachel, great. Thank you. I'll check back in a minute or so. All right, if you need a little bit more time, I'm just going to keep moving forward, but please feel free um, to keep thinking about these questions here. And I do invite you to turn your cameras back on if you are here with us. But if you need to keep your camera off because maybe you're having a snack or it's lunchtime where you're at, that is also totally okay. So with that, I would love for all of you to meet Lucas. He will be joining us on this IDP journey today, and he'll be kind of our example throughout the time so that you have a better idea of what putting this IDP into action might look like. Lucas is a really high performer, and he has received similar feedback the last 2 performance cycles. He would really like to leverage an IDP to develop his public speaking skills. We can think of Lucas as a combination of several of us, right? He has the opportunity to slow his pace. He also has the opportunity to use hand gestures more intentionally, and he has the opportunity to use less filler words. It's currently November, and he has a presentation in February where he'll have the opportunity to put his new skills to the test. And so he'll be joining us on this development journey. So with that, we will dive into building your individual development plan. Many of you are likely familiar with the SMART goal framework. And with that lens, an IDP goal should be as specific as possible. It should have clear success metrics that can be measured. It should be challenging but attainable within a given time frame, which we'll go over shortly. It should tie back to a company, team, or personal goal, and it should be completed within a 6 to 12 month period. So that's kind of the given time frame that an IDP goal should be completed. And the reason for that is if we extend beyond a year, it's really easy to lose traction of our goals that we've set for our IDP. So you want to make sure that you're really tracking and accomplishing the IDP goal that you've set out within a year. Otherwise, very easy for it to kind of fizzle out and be put on the shelf and then never, touched again. So with that, we have Lucas. He has filled out the first portion of his IDP, and he decides to focus in on one skill in particular. So when you are creating your IDP, be as specific as possible. And if you have multiple goals that you want to achieve, maybe focus in on what is the most important skill or goal that you want to achieve through using this IDP. And so Lucas, he decides to focus in on using less filler words. That's something that is measurable, attainable, and what he's hoping to do is to reduce the amount of filler words used to 5 or less. And so he's going to apply that in this next presentation that he has on February 21st. And he's also clearly defined the impact that reaching this goal will have. This will, in turn, provide him the opportunity to more positively represent his team and the work that his team is doing. And he'll be able to share his expertise in a process change that will make the experience better for the organization. And so his goal that he has ties back to impacting the organization, right? He wants to effectively share a change process or a process change. And if he is able to do that in a way that is professional and perceived positively by the organization, then they'll also perceive the change as a positive thing to them. And so with that, now it is your turn to create the first portion of your IDP. So in chat, you'll see a link to an IDP template. I ask that you, sorry, one second. Here we go. I ask that you make a copy of this template and then feel free to edit away on that template. And so on the first page of the worksheet, you'll see the SMART goal section. So I'll ask that you fill out that first page of the IDP. And then after about 8 minutes or so, I will check in with you and see how things are going. I invite you to turn your cameras off again as you are reflecting on this. And then after you're done with filling out the first page of your IDP, we will go into breakout rooms. All right, I'll check back in about 8 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into chat or come off mute and ask. All right. IDP.
I'll share my goal with folks.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel.
I am currently the program coordinator in the Center for Faculty Development at Seattle University, and that is a learning and development center for our faculty. But currently, I support the programming, but I don't do any facilitation, which is something that I'm interested in. And so a skill that I would like to try out to see if it's something that I do enjoy and that I'm good at, would like to improve would be facilitation, training and development facilitation. And I think that success would look like having the opportunity to design and then facilitate some sort of a learning session. And that could be for faculty. It could also just be for other staff at the university. My administrative skills would apply either way. And my progress, I would consider progress I'd be able to measure that by evaluation results. So we always provide surveys at the end of all of our workshops, and that is how we measure our success. So positive evaluation results would be a great way to measure my success in delivering that.
Awesome. And what does positive mean to you?
That would be, well, we use Likert scales. so getting ratings of 5 or above on all of our categories.
And what is the scale out of?
7.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's great. You have a great measurement as far as identifying whether you've reached the goal or not. I am curious though, so you'll get ratings on how you've facilitated. How will you measure whether facilitation is for you or not? Because it sounds like you're also trying to identify whether facilitation is something you're interested in, right?
Yeah, I guess my measurement would be how energized I am by the experience. If I want to go back in and do it again, that would be a positive measurement in that sense. And if it's something that the thought of doing it again is fills me with dread, maybe not.
Awesome.
But yeah, generally work that I'm excited about is energizing, and you can feel that.
Yep. Awesome. So maybe your scale is, do I want to do this again? Yes or no, right? Okay. Awesome. Great. It sounds like you have great measurements both for how am I doing in terms of what other people are seeing, and then how am I doing based on internally, is this right for me or not? So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Rachel. And now all of you will have the same opportunity to help refine your success metrics with one another. So I'm going to go ahead and clear our annotation there. And next, we'll be going into breakout rooms where you'll have the opportunity to refine specifically your success metric for your IDP goal. And the reason why we focus in on the success metrics is because oftentimes IDPs fizzle out because we don't have a clear success metric or clear check-in milestones to identify whether we're reaching the goal or not. And so that is the area that I'd love for all of you to focus on, but of course, provide the context of your development goal, the impact that the goal will have, and the timeline in which you'd like to complete it. And for those of you who are not the active speakers, I have some questions on the screen for you that you can ask the active speaker in order to help refine that success metric. I'll share this slide with you in the breakout rooms. And so when it is your turn to be the active speaker, go ahead and share a little bit about your goal. And then after you've shared about that, the rest of the group will help refine specifically your success metric. You'll have about 4 minutes or so per partner to share about your goal. It looks like we do have 2 groups of 3 now, and so it'll be roughly 4 minutes. And in total, you'll be in the breakout rooms for about 12 minutes with a 60-second countdown at the end. So while Helen gets that set up, any questions before we send you off into breakout rooms? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Helen, and I'll see you all back shortly. We hope you had a great discussion. Before we go into our group discussion, we are going to take a quick 5-minute break. So just a quick breather for a bio break, or if you need coffee, lunch, tea, water, whatever it might be. We'll see you back here about 5 after the hour. So 1:05 Pacific time, we will meet back here and keep moving forward. Thank you, Helen. All right, we'll have just one volunteer share maybe ahas, insights, questions. And if you feel more comfortable sharing in chat, please feel free to do so.
In our room, there was conversation about do I focus on something that I need to do or something that I want to do? And kind of figuring out a way to maybe marry those two things a little bit. Because there wasn't a ton of enthusiasm for some of the things that you know you need to work on. So how can you frame that in a way that gets you excited about actually working on it and not just putting it off forever?
Yeah. It's a great question. And did you come to a conclusion, or does anyone here have any suggestions on how to marry those two?
So my larger all up goal is data. I hate data with an undying passion. It's just not my cup of tea. And so as my smaller goal, which I focused this version of the IDP on, I did something that I can use to better evaluate impact later on and collect that data. So I'm doing a design aspect, which has a little bit more draw for me, a little bit more of my personality in it versus the data, which then after, because I did a 6-month approximately IDP, I can focus the latter half of the year on utilizing a tool that I created to work within that data.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, Mary. Break it up into smaller pieces and making those smaller pieces a little bit more tied to your passions. That's great. Awesome.
In our group, we all had our specific tasks. We didn't really discuss how to pick them, and we dug more into how to assess whether they were successful and maybe how to make them less broad.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Let me download this here. I'll make sure to share that with you beyond today. So with that, we'll keep moving forward. All right, so the next portion of our workshop is all about the 4 E's. And before we dive into building out the 4 E's portion of your IDP, I do want to quickly review why this portion of the IDP is so important. And on the screen here, you'll see the 70-20-10 Institute graphic. And what it ties back to is that most of our learning actually takes place on the job, which for those of you who are L&D professionals, I'm sure you're very, very aware of this kind of stat. And so some of the research that was conducted by the 70-20-10 Institute found that roughly 90%, and of course, the percent is a very rough estimate, but 90% of learning and development happens on the job. And that really only leaves about 10% of L&D occurring through typical learning interventions like taking online course, participating in workshops, like this one, reading articles, having personal time of reflection. And the reason for that is because our brains are literally making new pathways in order to learn these new skills that we're setting our mind to. When we don't have a way to apply the learning that we're doing, we quite literally take the information, it goes in one ear and out the other. And so it's really, really important for us to find ways to not only learn about the skill that we're hoping to attain, but then we also need a way to apply that skill so that we're solidifying the behavior change or the knowledge that we're hoping to gain. And so when we take this 4E framework approach to our IDPs, we're taking a more holistic approach to your development and then giving yourself the best odds for solidifying your learning. And so the 4 E's include exposure, which is all about learning by observing others. You pull for feedback from that person. You may ask interview questions. And this is one of the best ways to learn because according to famous social psychologist Albert Bandura, we learn best through imitation and modeling. And so when we are exposed to the people who are doing the skill that we want to attain really well, we can mimic what they're doing and we can learn from them in order to also do that skill really well. The next one is education, and this is all about learning by acquiring new information. People typically learn faster by teaching. So although you may learn by acquiring that new information, maybe through taking a course through LinkedIn Learning or your LMS in your organization, what a really great next step is teaching others about this skill. And that is or that can be done to a mentor or maybe a small team that you are a part of, or your manager, whoever it might be. But teaching about that skill to somebody else after you learn about it is a really great way to solidify that learning. The third E is experience, and this is all about learning by doing. And this could be through volunteering, taking on a stretch assignment, or by mentoring someone else. However, when we are in the experience, it's really easy to get really immersed and then forget that learning is actually happening. So a really great way to solidify kind of the learning from the experience is by doing a retrospective of sorts after the experience is completed so that you can identify what did you learn, what would you do differently next time, what did you do really well, and things of that nature. And then finally, we have the fourth E, which is entourage. And your entourage could include mentors or peers. And really the purpose of this fourth E is to have that added accountability and feedback from those that you trust along the way. And so a really great way to kind of leverage your entourage is by finding somebody who you really trust and then being willing to receive maybe tough feedback along your development journey. Any questions about the 4 E's? Okay. Awesome. All right, so let's revisit our friend Lucas. Lucas here, he has identified some sort of activity or person for each of the 4 E's. And so for the exposure, he is going to interview his colleague, Michelle. Michelle is really great at public speaking. She's in the sales department and is literally doing pitches to customers every single day. And so she's really great at making sure there's less filler words. She uses hand gestures really effectively, and her sales numbers are through the roof. So she does her job really, really well. So he's going to interview her and learn some skills from her. He's also going to complete 3 online courses that he's going to research on Google. And as he was doing some research about public speaking, he found Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a group that he's going to join where he'll actually have the experience to practice public speaking and getting really great feedback from others who are part of the Toastmasters group. As part of his entourage, he's going to have Chris, Jesse, Lacey, and John. Chris and Jesse are part of his team and they see what he does day in and day out. And so they're going to provide him with great feedback along the way. And then Lacey and John, he just met in the IDP workshop. So he was in a group with them all throughout the session. And so he's going to create check-in moments with those people so that they can keep one another accountable as they're progressing through their IDP. Any questions about what Lucas will be doing with the 4 E's? All right, awesome. Well, now it is your turn to identify your 4 E's for the goal that you've created. So I'll give you, again, about 8 minutes or so, and then I'll check back in. And you'll have 8 minutes to fill out the second page of that original worksheet that you saw. We can share the link in chat again if you need it, but I'm assuming you have it pulled up. So I'll invite you to turn your cameras off as you're filling out the second page of that worksheet. And then in about 8 minutes, we'll check back in. I hope you were able to come up with some great ideas. Does anyone want to share any unique or impressive ideas that you came up with?
I'll share. I think our group, one of the things we talked about was entourage being an area that was kind of, for some of us, it was a little more challenging. But Kate had a really great share of like having a coach and someone that she's involved with. And so trying to figure out whether it's a mentor, coach, or peer, I think sometimes that's a little challenging to figure out.
Yeah. And you have one another, right? You've spent 2 hours together, and so you can certainly tap one another as you progress in your IDP. Any other ideas or ahas, questions you might have?
I think the education piece, that was a little bit challenging because if this is a brand new skill for me, and instructional design would, is something that I need to learn more about. Huge field. If I'm starting to dip my toe in, like, where do you begin? You don't want to like pick up a huge fat manual right off the bat and be like, all right, I'm going to read this humongous thing, because that's probably more than you need when you're starting out. So that was kind of challenging, of going, well, what's going to be a great resource that's going to be kind of surface level that I can just start with, narrow that down. My room partner actually gave me a great link of a good starting point, so that was really helpful. But that's the kind of thing that felt a little bit daunting, was like, where do you begin?
Yeah,
And
that's a really great.
Perhaps your mentor or a coach might be somebody who'd be really helpful in directing you on that.
Absolutely. All right. And if instructional design is something that you want to pursue, if this was already shared with you, awesome. But shameless plug, we are partnering with Endurance Learning as an ATD Puget Sound chapter, and Endurance Learning is going to be offering a special cohort price for ATD-PS members that essentially enables you to get the basics of instructional design, and as a result, you'll have a portfolio at the end that you can leverage if you're hoping to enter into the instructional design realm. So keep an eye out for events, or we should be posting something soon about it. Yes, thank you, Helen. Endurance Learning event will be announced soon, so it should be coming down the pike within the next couple of weeks. But I think the cohort doesn't start until later this year, but yes. Cool. Awesome. All right. So with that kind of concludes the building of the IDP. And so next, we're going to talk about what you do after you have this document filled out, right? And so what's next? Most importantly, you'll want to be sure to build off of the momentum that you've built in this virtual room today. And so it's one thing to document your IDP, but now you actually have to go and do it and make sure to check in and identify what milestones you need to reach in order to accomplish the goal. And so I've outlined a few strategies that you can use in order to do just that. So first, make sure that you have accountability. It sounds like some of you talked about that in your breakout rooms, but really consider your entourage and contact them as soon as possible. Set up a one-on-one connect with them so that they're aware that they're a part of your entourage. You'll also want to set up a meeting with your manager or mentor. If you are in between jobs like me, maybe you have a mentor that you're kind of chatting with on a regular basis. It's really important to get buy-in from and feedback from your manager specifically, because they can help ensure that you're kind of reaching those goals. And they might suggest some adjustments that you might make in order to tie it back to a specific organizational goal or team goal. You'll also want to track your progress along the way with regular check-ins with your manager or mentor and with regular check-ins with your entourage. And so page 3 of the handout that I shared with you has a template for you to do just that. There's some questions that you can consider as you're meeting with your manager, some questions for you, and also some questions for your manager. So I encourage you to make that portion your own. Maybe think of some other specific questions you want to add to that template. Really, I've created a starting point, but you'll want to take ownership and make it more specific to your specific goal. And then finally, please don't hesitate to reach out to me either via LinkedIn or email, whatever might make more sense for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions as you run into any roadblocks. All right, any questions or maybe some additional ideas for how you can make sure that you're doing the IDP?
I just wanted to quickly add to something that was mentioned just a moment ago about coaching, or the part about the entourage. Um, I think finding a coach or a mentor is a really great idea. I also see Valentina's suggestion about showing up in places where there's a group of coaches or a group of peers is also great. I would even encourage you to look at informal, maybe easier, lighter opportunities. Like I often have coffees with people that are just 15, 20 minutes in my org, and I consider them part of my entourage. And personally, being an introvert, it's a little less daunting if I can set a goal of reaching out to a handful of people in casual ways, as well as maybe eventually picking out a coach or a mentor from that. So I love the mentor and the coach and the formal ideas. I think that's absolutely the best way to have really strong relationships that are ongoing. But I encourage you to look for those little, those small opportunities that can really become something, or plant a seed for something bigger.
I was going to add one thing that is always a hurdle for me is if I schedule time to do something, I'm much more likely to do it. So if I block off a 2-hour window during my week, I'll make progress. And if I don't, sometimes it just gets forgotten.
Great call out. And then Randy also shared, if you're in an organization that has performance review system, it might be good to integrate your IDP goals into your performance review cycle. Yes, also really great suggestion. Awesome. Thank you, Helen, Annie, and Randy. Those are awesome. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and recap what we covered today. So we identified skills, or a skill that you would like to develop, or maybe it was knowledge that you'd like to gain. We also built your IDP. We documented strategies for achieving the goal captured in the IDP through the 4E framework. And you identified next steps to keep the momentum that was built here today continuing into your day-to-day. I also, with the help of Helen, was able to identify a couple of you who had goals and intentions for the workshop today. And so I want to revisit these really quickly. Any lingering questions based off of, what you were hoping to get out of today? Okay, doesn't sound like it. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that we were able to meet your aspirations. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for your time and for the investment that you've put into you. A really great way for you to give back is by sharing your feedback. So I'm going to share a link in chat. There's also the QR code on the screen. So I invite you to take the next, 3 to 2 to 3 minutes to fill out that survey. And that's a really helpful way for us to know what we can do similarly next time, what we can do differently and better, and what you liked, what you didn't like, and things of that nature, so that we can continue to improve this experience for future participants. I didn't share this with you at the beginning, but you are also somewhat part of a pilot program. Our goal is to incorporate this workshop into a regular offering for the ATD-PS community as part of Helen's team program development. And so, professional development, my goodness. And so we are just testing this out to see if this might be a desire for the community. All right. Thank you all. I'll stay on in case you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope to see you around the ATD-PS community.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Valentina. This was really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
going to get off now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. All right.